an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Broadchurch, Season 2, Episode 6. In this episode, finally, Mark is getting yelled at the way he deserves. It's taken too long, but I understand. And I don't really know what I want to happen. I'm just relieved that we have finally gotten here. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Sophie for commissioning this episode. Oh, people are saying in the chat that I'm cutting out. Well, Ms. T says I am not cutting out. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. It looks okay from my end, but that's not an indicator of anything, to be honest. So this episode is a disaster. And I don't mean a disaster like it's a bad episode. I just mean a lot of things start to really hit the fan. And I am extremely interested. We've got 2 episodes left. And I know that I saw in the Spoil Me group on Facebook that a lot of people said that they either did not like the 3rd season or they did not finish it. And it wasn't like they consciously thought this sucks, but it didn't hold their interest and they didn't wind up going back and finishing it. So as of now, I am only commissioned to the end of season 2. And I think it's going to stay that way. Based on the conversation, people have pretty much agreed they're going to leave it there. This leads me to believe that this whole Latimer storyline is going to be somewhat wrapped up by the end of this season. I have a hard time thinking that if things weren't completely set in place, that people wouldn't have continued watching, wanting to know what was going to happen next. So I'm going on with the assumption that whatever happens with Danny's murder is going to be brought to a close by the end of this season. And I hope that's true. That said, the only other option is that they carry this storyline with Sandbrook into season 3, or season 3 is an entirely new crime. And I really hope it's that second one, because if the Sandbrook thing doesn't get wrapped up, and we wind up having to go into a whole 3rd season with it, and, you know, I'm not going to be covering it, so I won't actually be able to share with you guys how I feel about it. That's going to feel really frustrating. So I'm hoping the Sandbrook thing wraps up this season also. I just feel like the rhythm of the story would make more sense if it didn't, and we'll just have to wait and see. I'm going to talk about the Sandbrook thing out of the gate because, again, it's the least interesting. The thing about Sandbrook is that I'm not rooting for anybody. There's nobody who is being accused of the crime that I really like and I want to see them get off. There's nobody that I truly despise that I think needs to be nailed to the wall and isn't being held responsible. I know so little about everybody involved. The only thing that I care about in relation to Sandbrook is that Alec winds up with some closure on it. And that's really it for me. So, and I was sort of hoping that would change, but we're in the, the final stretch here. We're in the next episode's penultimate of the season. And if I haven't grown to really care about this case, I don't think it's going to happen now. So, like I said, I'm only in it for Alec and how he is feeling about this and how he is viewing this. So, the thing with there's this interesting tactic that Alec executes this episode. And it's kind of great, actually. It's on Ellie's suggestion. He talks about how he just feels like everybody involved in that case has been dicking him around. Nobody's telling him the whole story. Everybody's hiding stuff. And he just doesn't really know what to think anymore. But he can't let it go. So that's not an option. And Ellie suggests that he start messing around with them right back. And what he does is he winds up kicking Claire out of the safe house that he has for her. I don't think I have thought to ask. Was he paying rent on this place? Was this somewhere he owned? Or like, what is this building to him? I don't know that it matters. But, Rebecca's in the chat. First time I've actually made it to a live stream. Hi, Rebecca. What's up? I don't know what this building is that Alec owned. Like, if he owns it, if he was renting it on her behalf, or if it was like, I have no idea. But it seems like he must own it because of the way he kicks her out, saying he wants her out of there in 48 hours, I think he gives her. And it's a really fascinating scene because obviously Alec and Ellie are right. All this bitch has done is be shady, change her story, and generally come across like she is hiding not some things. She certainly seems like she has a variety of things that she's keeping under her hat. And he brings up a really great point that I loved, which I hadn't thought of, but he and Ellie go walking in the woods in the area where he found the body. And there's talking about how there's normally all of these bluebells growing here in the spring. And she mentions the bluebell that she found in Claire's wardrobe. And he says something like, yeah, in the wardrobe of the guest room where somebody would be certain to find it. It doesn't make sense if you're holding on to like, some sort of relic of something illicit you did. You don't put it in a room another stranger is going to have full access to. And I was like, oh my God, that's a really good point. Why didn't I think of that? Like, of course, it just didn't occur to me. So his assertion is that she wanted them to find it. And I really don't know why that would be, what she would intend by that. I don't have any idea. And I really I can't believe it didn't occur to me. I really feel like a bit of an idiot that keeping something like, I think it's because I had forgotten that it isn't her house. So it would be a weird enough thing to do if it were her house, and I probably should have thought of it anyway. But I can understand the mentality of like, if you're trying to hide something, you put it in a room that's used less because in your mind, there's less likelihood somebody's going to find it. And it's like not exactly a rational thing to do because like I said, that's where you put people to stay and they are more likely to like go through things and find it. But I could see thinking it's safer in a room that people don't use very often and there not being a lot of logic behind that. However, since this isn't even her home, that it doesn't hold any water at all. So what is the deal with the bluebells then? Why would she have put it there? It doesn't make any sense. I have no idea. So anyway, he tells her she has 48 hours to vacate. And his justification for this is just, you've been changing your story. You tell me that you want protection from Lee, and then you have sex with him in the house. You clearly are not actually concerned about him. So, yeah, I don't think that this is working, and I'm not going to keep paying to cover you, so you need to get out of there. And you can see from her reaction, this bitch freaks out. She's overturning tables, chucking chairs across the room. Like, she is not okay. And I can't imagine what the deal is. That her explanation to Claire, because Claire finally, like, she drives up and, her explanation to Ellie. Ellie drives up, sees Claire standing, like, in the middle of a field, sort of at her wit's end, asks her, what the hell, you know, what are you doing out here? And Claire does this whole, like, I thought we were friends thing, to which Ellie, like, snorts and says, really? I just want to take a moment of silence for that moment, you guys, because Ellie has come a long way. You know, like, Ellie of the first season, she would have never reacted that way, derisive at the idea. And I loved it. I loved it. She's just like, bitch, no, you didn't. Come on. And Claire's trying to tell her that I can't control myself around him. It's the sex. And this feels like it has to be a clue, right? So, and we see this later. She's talking with Lee. He says something about how they had a plan and she screwed it. She says something about, you want to talk about screwing, and slaps him across the face. He grabs her by the throat, backs her against the wall, and in response, she unbuckles his pants and he fucks her against the wall, like, while still holding her by the throat. Obviously, the violence is a massive turn on for both of them. And honestly, I get it. Like, it's fucked up, but, like, let's be real. The scene is hot. I mean, I'm not here to judge, kids. It is what it is. It's fucked up. But I feel like her saying constantly to Ellie, I can't control myself around him, the sex. Ellie scoffs and says, get some self-control. But I have to think, the desperation in Claire's voice when she says that she can't control herself around him, to me indicates she has done something that she would never think she'd be capable of. This is pointing more and more in my, like, I have this sort of, like, spectrum in my head. I'm sorry if you guys, you see these bruises? I got a massage on Saturday, and this is what they did. It's real bad. So sorry if that's, like, alarming you guys, but that's what that was. The spectrum in my head is either the divorced couple who live next door is guilty, or Lee and Claire are guilty. And for some reason, I see it in that dichotomy, that it's one couple or the other couple. I don't see it as an individual person. It feels like too many things have been covered up, and too many things don't, like, match. And therefore, it had to be a pair of people. I could be wrong, and the pairs could be aligned in a totally different way, but I really have a hard time believing that one person was responsible for both of their disappearances / one murder, maybe two murders, we'll see. So I am straying more and more towards it being Lee and Claire, because their sexual reaction to violence, you know, this is one of those things that you get into real murky territory, because I don't want to kink shame. People can be into violence in conjunction with sex, and it has nothing to do with actual violence that is non-consenting and genuinely hurtful. You know, he grabs her by the throat and shoves her against the wall, and there's a moment of, like, which way is this going to go? But it never actually felt to me like she was in danger. Not really. And I could be misreading that, but it just felt like it felt like they were playing out a scene that they have done a couple of times with each other before. You know, there's just something rote about it. And so what I'm saying is, I don't want to say, oh, this couple who's into, like, BDSM, because she says that she wants to be tied up during an episode, is obviously they're murderers because they're into BDSM. I don't believe that at all. That's not what I mean. But the way that she describes being completely out of control with him, and the way that they both seem to react to this feels like that's what the show's trying to tell me. I could be way off base, and the show might be showing me this to actually mislead me. They've done that before, so we'll see. But I don't know. The fact that she keeps talking about how she isn't herself around him feels like they're trying to tell me something. I just don't really know. When he says, we had a plan and you screwed it, I wish that I could figure out what he means by that, because you screwed it. Her screwing the plan could have happened at any point. It could have been way back when he was arrested. It could have been before he got arrested. It could have been since he fled the country. It could have been, more recently. Maybe when he says that you told D.I. Hardy about the fact that we had sex, maybe it's just much more recent. Maybe the fact that he was back and seemed to be stalking her was part of what they were trying to set up as this story that she felt like she was in danger. And now it's very clear that's not true because she caved and told them the truth. If it's that, I have a hard time understanding Claire as a character, because why would she cave and tell them that? And she's not caving about a lot of other stuff. Why would she tell them? Is she planning to try and turn on him? Does she consider turning on him and then he sort of reels her back in and she begins to rethink her? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But where things sort of wrap up with them, we have this scene with the two of them, and then that's the last we see of Lee, I think. And then we have the scene where she's doing Ellie's hair, and she has a portfolio. And they had gone to speak to the couple who live next door. Forgive me, guys, I cannot remember these people's names. But there's a photo of their daughter with a pendant around her neck that she was given. And Ellie sees that pendant around Claire's neck. And this was the pendant that had been in Alex's wife's car that got burgled. And we see that Claire is the one who burgled the car. And that's all she took. It's such an odd thing, you guys, because do you all remember Alec saying specifically, and I feel like I can't tell if this is purposeful or if this is a writing mistake, but Alec says specifically to Ellie that somebody broke into his wife's car, probably kids, and the evidence got stolen. It doesn't make sense to me that anybody would think it was probably kids when that's the only thing that was taken. Does that, that doesn't make sense, right? Why would that, it's in the front pocket of a portfolio that is sitting there in the backseat of the car. If it's kids busting into a car, they'd take the whole portfolio. They would take maybe the stereo. They would take any number of things. Why is it, I'm going to rifle through it, take this one thing, and then bounce, and you think it was just a random robbery? D.I. Hardy is way too smart to think that. Why does he think that? The only thing I can think is either A, the show fucked up, they don't realize, they don't remember that he said that, or B, he's actually covering for somebody too, which I don't really see, I don't think that makes any sense. So I have to think the show fucked up. I don't know. And it turning out to be Claire that stole it. Because of the fact that she's wearing it in a photo in her portfolio, which Ellie sees. Claire sees Ellie seeing it, snatches the portfolio away, and later on we see her lighting that photo on fire, which is honestly sort of hilarious because I have to imagine that there is another photo somewhere of her wearing that shit. Social media exists, and websites and things like that. I bet she's got it on somewhere else too. Was it hers and she gave it to the daughter? Did she steal it and then wear it? Because if that's how it went, that's insane. That's that's the kind of move that I hesitate to even call ballsy, because it doesn't even, it's so unintelligent that I'm like, that just feels like outright stupidity. Why did she, I don't know. Did she give it away as a gift? Did she try and take it back after the murder? Like, what? I don't know where to go with this, but obviously what we're meant to take away from this is that Claire, yet again, is hiding something. Obviously, at this point, I'm exhausted by it. I'll be honest. And I feel a little bit sad about it, you guys, because the whole last season was one of the best seasons of television I've ever seen. It was just so well acted. The storyline is so tight. It's really emotional without feeling bleak to the point where you don't want to watch the next episode. This season feels so much more of a drag. And last season, when I was covering those episodes and I finished recording for an episode, I would immediately start watching the next one, in the break between recording the previous Spoil Me and the next one. I would watch the first 10 minutes of the next episode of Broadchurch because I couldn't wait. And now I have no trouble waiting between recordings at all. It's just not really I want to know what happens. It's not that's not, it hasn't completely lost my interest, but there really isn't a sense of urgency for me. I'm saying that now and I'm let me look and see when the next episodes are. 18th and 25th of this month. So I'll be wrapped by May. All right, cool. And I think that the Sandbrook case is the biggest reason for that for me. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my cat. Owen went into his office and left her in the hall, and she cannot stand that. So yeah, I don't know. I have a really hard time with the Sandbrook case thing. I don't understand who Claire is, so I can't really care about her. And I need somebody to latch onto in that case. And they haven't really given me anybody, so it's tough. But Claire does tell Alec's wife about the necklace thing. That's who she's speaking to, right? Yeah. Because she calls and Alec went and got a pacemaker put in. He didn't tell Ellie this was going to happen. He just sent her a text evidently on the day of. So she calls to tell him what she found out, and his wife is the one who answers. And she has been feeding him a little bit more information than she said she would initially. She put up a big fight at first because she didn't want to reopen this whole thing, this whole can of worms, basically. But then she brings him some info. He asks for a full forensics team on that furnace. And she puts her foot down on that and is I don't think so. But yeah, I wonder if this is going to materialize into anything. Because like I said, if this were real life, I would trust there was another photo out there of her wearing that necklace. Because this is a TV show, I may have to accept that's the only one, and now that is forever gone. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. So that's the whole thing with Claire and Lee Ashworth. And I just don't really I don't have any further theories. It's too muddled. So now we're going to go talk about Ellie. And in order to talk about Ellie, we have to talk about Tom. This is one of those things where I'm simultaneously disgusted, but also pleased. So Tom decides that he is going to give evidence. He tells Ellie that she can't be in the courtroom and that if she's there, he will ask for her to be removed. So she's out with Alec when Tom's giving evidence and doesn't actually get to see firsthand what he is suggesting. She has to find out later. Alec gets on the stand, and he basically insinuates that during his meetings with Mark Latimer in the trailer, that Mark confessed to killing Danny. And we've got two things that Mark hasn't told the prosecution. One of them is that he bribed a guard to see Joe. That comes up later. But right now, he did not tell the prosecution that he was seeing Tommy at all. You guys, I have just about had it with this guy. I was so relieved at the way Beth absolutely raked him over the coals. He keeps being like, I didn't think it was relevant. Sir, where have you been? Have you seen the shit that they have raked up from like years ago? Are you kidding me that you don't think this shit's going to wind up being relevant, that they wouldn't have found out about it? As soon as you heard that he was going to give evidence, you should have known he was going to tell people he was seeing you. Like, obviously, especially due to the way that you decided to leave things. Because reminder, he just dumps Tom with no warning and says, I'm not coming back here again. We can't see each other anymore. And yeah, the kid's going to be a little bit fucking salty about that, dude. It's baffling to me that Mark doesn't think about this at all. He is, and it's not like, I'm not saying that this is poor writing, just for the record. This actually feels like a thing people would do. They would genuinely be so determined to keep their secret that they would fool themselves into thinking that it's irrelevant just because they don't want to tell anybody about it. And that's 100% what I think is going on with him. But oh my God, I wanted to kill him. And I really sympathized with Beth. I'm going to come back to that. So Tom, like I said, he's so determined that his father can't be guilty that he twists Mark's words and says that Mark said he was guilty. And basically the whole thing is just tragic and awful. Because on the one hand, I want to be sympathetic to the fact that Tommy doesn't want his dad to be a fucking pedophile murderer. On the other hand, you know that this man isn't guilty. Come on. You have to know that. And you are putting it in the heads of people who will always wonder that he'll never get away from. And you are potentially, if circumstantial evidence were to support your assertion, potentially sentencing this man to prison or death, which is horrific. And I was so thankful. What is her name? Jacqueline? Is Jacqueline the prosecution or the defense? I know it's Sharon and Jacqueline, but I can't remember which one is which. But the prosecution, she's out talking to Mark and Beth, and she says we have to, because this is before Mark's on the stand, so they haven't had their big fight yet. She says I have to go in and cross-examine him as kindly as I can so that the jury doesn't hate me. And I will say, she's amazing. Rebecca says, Sharon defense, Jacqueline prosecutor. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you. But yeah, she really pulls very gently at the threads of Tom's story, and it just unravels. I should say, Tom unravels. His story, it could have been, there's nothing to really disprove it. But she gently is like, dude, come on. you have to know. This isn't even about your dad. I understand that this is hard, but your friend is dead. And what we're doing here is giving him a voice because there is no way for him to speak up for himself anymore because he's gone. And that, you're violating that by coming and lying. We know you're lying. You have to tell us the truth here. And she really gets him to walk everything back. And I was so impressed. That was probably the most I've liked her this season, because it just is such a delicate operation and she pulls it off so beautifully. There does feel like there is compassion there. It doesn't seem feigned, like she's trying to be like, oh, we're all so sympathetic. She genuinely seems like, look, kid, I know this sucks, but come on. And I just thought it was a great scene, and her acting is just so good. So Mark goes up on the stand and he's asked where he was. He tells the truth about being with Becca, is her name, I think. And that he had sex with her in her car. And they ask where he went after. And this was devastating, you guys. Oh, God. This is one of those things that I absolutely could see happening. But to me, the lack of logic here is so astounding that I would never know what to do. He gets up on that fucking stand and he tells them that the reason he took so long was because he was writing a letter to his wife ending their marriage, telling her it was over. And he does not tell Beth any of this. She finds out along with everyone else in the courtroom in front of everyone. Honestly, her acting in that scene is so good, you guys. Because first she looks like she might throw up, which, yes, correct. Secondly, fucking Becca came in with her boyfriend, the Father Paul, and initially Beth's already like, well, what the fuck is she doing here? Are you serious? And apparently this woman's like, I want to hear what they're saying about me, which I guess. But for her to be present when Beth finds this out is such an insult to injury for me. It would be bad enough to find out that my husband had been planning on leaving me and I had no idea in front of everybody. But in front of everybody, plus the woman that he was fucking at the time, is somehow so much worse and so much more humiliating. Especially because there's a sense that she knew already, you know, especially when they meet up the night after Danny is found. And she says something like, things don't have to change between us. I think that she intended to take him from his wife. And I don't use that language because of I don't want to make it like he has no choice and she's just some evil woman swooping in and he hasn't got free will. I just mean, it overall lowered my opinion of her, because it's one thing to sleep with a married man. That's already like just gross. Like, just don't do it, you guys. I have not been involved with anybody in a relationship personally. And shit happens. So I'm not trying to be a dick, but come on. But secondly, you're trying to tell the father of a murdered kid that things don't have to change between the two of you. That he can still, leave his wife after she just found out her son was murdered? That's, really awful. You know? So, anyway, Beth is out in the hall, basically scream crying, which you would do. And Ellie comes up and holds her and tells her, this isn't you. This is all Joe. This is all Joe. And I loved that. That was such a great point. And that's what Ellie brings up later when she goes and absolutely rips Tom apart. Apart from Mark getting screamed at, Tom getting screamed at was so cathartic. I absolutely loved this, you guys. Loved it. She tells him that, first of all, I cannot fucking believe you. You went up on the stand under oath and lied, and you knew you were lying, and you knew that you were throwing this innocent guy under the bus, and I can't believe, I hope that you are ashamed of yourself. Are you ashamed of yourself? And she is screaming. Her acting in this, you guys, I cannot handle it. Why is she so good? You can feel that like rage rippling off her. It's like a heat wave. Like I'm surprised the air around her isn't shimmering like fucking asphalt in the summertime. She has the kind of rage that we have all seen from our moms. Am I wrong? This is a special kind of rage that mothers get into, where I think it's so potent because they care about us so much. And they like just don't know where to direct it when they're that angry at us while still like caring about us. So it turns into this cocktail that's like a fucking Molotov, and it's just really amazing to watch her channel that the way she does here. She feels like she's going to literally combust. And then, you are coming home with me, he says, no, I'm not. He's still trying to put the fight up here. Ellie has fucking had it. Had it. Do you hear me? Yes, you are. Because I am your mother, and we are a family, and he has already ruined everything. I am not going to let him ruin us too. It is a great moment. It is a great moment. And I know that we have sort of been operating under that Tom doesn't believe his father is guilty. Now, I have said, I think on the show, I'm pretty sure he knows his father is guilty. He just can't cope, right? Which is understandable. I'm not really mad at him for that. But it has been hard because he won't admit it to himself. And he's clearly been holding his mother sort of responsible for upholding the case against his father. Like, he thinks that if she weren't acting like she is, his father wouldn't be in jail at all. And I wonder if after this moment, seeing her rage and seeing how much she really thinks his father is the one who's responsible for ruining their lives, will he believe it now? Will he be like, oh my God, she does think it was him? Like, does this land and make an impression on him at all? I really can't tell. I want so much for him to take his head out of the fucking sand, you know? At the same time, in the end, it doesn't matter that much if he thinks that his father did it, as long as he is willing to. I mean, I guess it still does make, I don't know, you guys. I don't know. I want him to like face reality, but I don't want to watch the meltdown as he realizes the truth, you know? And eventually we see them coming back into the house. They're moving back into town. And she says that they're going to repaint the bedroom that she used to share with his dad, which I think that's a really good, like, you know, I was sort of thinking to myself, would I want to move back into the house that I lived in with somebody who it turns out was a murderer? I think I'd be down to sell the house and, you know, move out of town, especially considering, as she puts it, nobody is ever going to believe I didn't know the whole time. Personally, I would want to make a fresh start somewhere else and get the fuck out. That said, if you're gonna stay, at least redoing the inside of the house is one way to make it feel new, to make it feel like there's a fresh start happening, even if you can't do it the way that I would really want to do it, were I in her shoes. It's tough, but we have a scene of the two of them like painting the bedroom together, and him looking at her at one point as she's sort of like gazing around the room with a sense of satisfaction on her face. And, sorry, you guys. And you know what I realize? Just 1 second, you guys. I think that these are some people to mow our lawn. The look that he gives her when he is painting and she's looking around the room, I can't decide. I feel like there's respect there. I was really worried that he was going to be cowed in the moment at the court when she tells him, you are absolutely fucking moving back in. And then once it was time, the pressure of that moment and the fear that he was feeling in the face of her wrath would have worn away, and he would begin to resent her again. I'm not trying to pretend he doesn't resent her at all anymore, but I was thinking that maybe he would be sullen and quiet again. And instead, it seems like he's looking at her with a sort of expression of like, well, okay, I guess here we are. Like, I don't know. I feel like this is a good thing. I really hope, because, her pathos in the previous episode where she's trying to convince him to come home was so heart-wrenching. I really do hope that this is an end to it. Also, I want to mention the fact that when she goes and she holds Beth and she's telling her it's not you, it's Joe. Joe did all of this. Beth doesn't scream at her like she has done before. And I wonder if this is the beginning of Beth beginning to reconsider whether Ellie knew. I don't know if Beth witnessed Ellie's explosion on her son. I think that would probably help. If she saw the way that Ellie talked to Tom, how disgusted she was, and found out that he was refusing to live with her, I feel like that would really help. And in a way that I don't know anything else would. So I'm kind of hoping that Beth saw that, but I'm not sure. So what the defense decides to do, because the thing comes up with how Mark bribed a guard to allow him to see Joe. And the defense applies for the case to be thrown out, implying that that Joe is not going to be able to get a fair trial based on all of the misconduct that has been occurring amongst the police. And it's a really, you guys, the fucking defense is so gross. First of all, we've got Fleabag sleeping with Oliver. I really want to know what the fuck Oliver is thinking. Oliver is, I think, out of everyone on this show, the biggest fuck up. He's really the one that's just consistently, I am like, where is your head at, dude? Are you kidding me? He just doesn't think things through at all. His mother is a treasure trove of scandal. And he invites this woman into his house. She has sex with him. His mother comes home in the middle of the night and is horrified to find Fleabag standing in her kitchen because, as she sees it, this woman is trying to tear the town apart. She is not wrong. And Fleabag, first of all, has absolutely no shame whatsoever, is not embarrassed, will not leave, and rifles through their, mail. I have no idea what it is that she could find in their mail that would be damaging, but evidently there's something. I am not excited to find out what this is. At all. I'm genuinely very concerned, actually. The way that she goes to tell Sharon about this juicy thing has me extremely concerned. And while we're on the subject of Sharon, I really want to know what the show thinks they're doing with Sharon and her son. Is that season 3? Is that... Because look, Sharon is not a good person. Not from what I have seen. She seems pretty despicable. And I don't know why the writers thought inserting some personal drama on her end of things was going to get my attention and make me care at all about her. But I couldn't give fewer shits what happens to her or her kid. She just seems like such a liar. She is so willing to tear people's lives apart. With this, like, holding this banner about everybody gets their day in court, except she's inventing scandals about people and ruining their lives and letting a potential pedophile and a definite murderer who she has to know is guilty walk free. And I can't excuse any of that. I don't care what her job is. I don't care if it's about the law. I don't care. So they keep coming back to this thing with her son and her trying to build a case about the assault against him. And it's so boring. And thank God they don't spend that much time on it, at least. I can say that. It's only a few minutes, that scene. But I genuinely want to pull the writers aside and be like, what did y'all think you were doing here? The only... Like I said, the only thing I can think is that they're trying to set up something for the 3rd season. And they're getting the groundwork in now. But like I said, if you don't actually even like this person, you're not invested, And that doesn't mean that she has to be a perfect person. No characters on this show are perfect people. I mean, Ellie is pretty close. She's great. But I just don't think that... I hope that's not the direction that they were trying to go in. And the fact that Jacqueline, we, hear her say basically, I didn't take your case because I don't like you. I fucking get it. At the time I was like, man, that is harsh, but that's pretty great. And the more I watch of this, I'm just like, well, you really have put me in the same position as Jacqueline, where I just... I don't want this woman to succeed because I don't like her. And she's bending the law to further her own ambitions without actual interest in morality or justice in any real way. So if she and her son get denied justice, I'm kind of unbothered, and it sucks because her son isn't necessarily as shitty as she is. So I'm sort of throwing him under the bus simply because of his association with her. But there it is. That's what happens when you're just watching a TV show, So anyway, yeah, that's what's going on with her. And I don't know what Fleabag could have dug up. But I truly am... I really, she's... I feel so weird about her especially because... she has the same lack of scruples in a lot of ways that Sharon does, but she is more willing to admit that Joe is guilty in a way that, it makes it seem like it genuinely bothers her. Now, that could just be because she's younger and newer to this. Maybe Sharon was bothered by this sort of thing initially as well, and she has just sort of learned to turn it off because she's a professional now. But because I haven't seen that happen... I'm more likely to like Fleabag, who seems a little bit bothered at the fact that they're in the position of defending this guy who's clearly guilty. At the same time, she seemed bothered for a second, and now she's gleefully collecting evidence of a scandal of some kind. So I don't, so, okay. Now let's talk about, well, I'll talk really briefly about Alec. I can't remember his wife's name. Sarah, is it? He is getting his pacemaker put in. That's why he wrote his will. I thought it was just because he was like worried about his health overall and feeling like he was on a downward spiral. But evidently there was a specific procedure that he was worried about. And he tells her that he misses her and that he wishes that they could go back to how things were. She tells him that she loves him because of, or she doesn't love him because of, but she said that she's always loved him for the fact that he was willing to take the bullet on her losing that evidence. And he responds with, "You love me." She says, "I loved you for that." And he says, "But not enough." And she looks irritated. And that's sort of the end of that scene. So he's trying in a weird passive-aggressive way to like bridge the gap between them. And she is also trying to do that. But their aims are different. He's trying to bridge it because he wants things to go back to how they were. She's trying to bridge it in that I would like to be friendly again, at least. And so they're not really seeing eye to eye on this whole thing. I am really curious what's going to happen with him. Like with the pacemaker, I don't know what kind of recovery time there is for that. And I wonder how much more involved in the case she's going to get now that he is sort of down for the count and Ellie's going to need somebody to bounce off of. And will they, team up a little bit while he's down, or will he sort of spring right back? And if they do team up a little bit and they talk to Claire, I'm pretty certain Alex slept with Claire. I felt like that immediately. Lee Ashford said something about it. I really believe him, honestly. And I can't help but wonder if that's going to be an issue, if that's going to come up. The last thing, and I'm going to just like go through this real quick to make sure that I'm not missing anything major. But the last thing that I want to talk about is the scene with Paul and Joe. Because you guys, I was so glad that Paul finally calls it quits. What a load off. I really wondered if he was going to turn around at the last second, but he doesn't, and I'm just so relieved. So what's going on is he's meeting with Joe, and Joe is basically trying to assess whether or not it looked like, he's like, what do you think of the case today? Do you think I'm winning? And you can just see how disgusted Paul is over this whole thing. And it's really very satisfying because we haven't really checked in with Joe much. He has been in the witness box. We had like them attempting to test him to see if he would be ready to be on the stand, and he was not. Other than that, we haven't really seen much out of him from like the first episodes of the season. And I was wondering what he thinks of all this. I'm trying to find the exact scene so that we can see what it is that he says, because there is an explanation, or I can't find it because it's such a brief scene, so I'm not really that surprised. Oh no, wait, here it is. Okay. Yeah, here it is. What do you? Yeah, here it is. Okay. Oh my God, I forgot that Claire and Lee go looking for housing together. Yeah, that's a weird scene. Okay, so here it is. Joe says, "I was worried when she wouldn't put me in the witness box, but now I see what her plan was." What do you reckon? Do you think they'll dismiss it? Do you think I'm winning? And Paul is, oh, you're guilty, Joe. And when he says that and looks into Joe's eyes, Joe looks genuinely startled. Like, well, what the fuck? He just does not understand who Paul is at all and what his job is. He says, I thought you were on my side. Why? Why? Why did you ever think that, dude? Are you kidding? He's a priest. I mean, that's not to say that priests haven't defended pedophiles. Don't get me wrong. But like, you know, oh my God. And Paul, oh my God. I really hate the fact that whenever the camera's on Joe, all I can do is look at his blue eyes and just be like, wow, look at his eyes. He has amazing eyes. So yeah, I thought you were on my side. And he says, I thought I could help you come to terms with what you've done, but I don't see you taking responsibility for your actions. And how do you think God would view that? And he takes the same tack that Sharon tried to take, where he's like, I've saved a lot of lives in my time when I was, like it's a fucking tally. Like if I've saved more lives than I've taken, then it evens out and it's fine. Like, dude. Paul says, you watched your son lie for you on oath and you're still trying to wriggle free. And Joe looks ashamed for the very first time. It's not like his own actions, murdering a child, seem to bother him. But the fact that his son lied on his behalf, that does bother him. That makes him feel shame. What? Oh my God. So yeah, Paul finishes it with like, that's it. Goodbye, Joe. And I loved it. I was so happy. He gets up and walks away. I was so pleased. Thank God. Okay. And I feel like I already talked about how Beth screams at Mark, but I wanted to talk a little bit in detail about some things that she says, because this really like hit home for me personally. And this is a phenomenon in heterosexual relationships, especially. Women are taught to see our relationships in a way that's like, we always have to look at ourselves as a couple and what's good for both of us in this collective way. And often put our partner first, and a variety of ways that might play out. There's all kinds of ways that you can see that sort of happening. Changing plans because it's not convenient for them, or, oh, they're really down tonight and I would like to be home because they're sad. And like things like this that are minor. But then there's also major things like, I wanted a career, but he had a job that he loved and one of us had to stay home, so I stayed home. There's major ways that can play out also. Men are not socialized to put the needs of others before theirs. It's not like that doesn't happen on an individual basis sometimes, but as a whole, society does not tell men that they need to create harmony. Men are taught that they are the leader of a family, they are the head, and a wife's responsibility is to make things function smoothly around them. Right? This is just, women are seen as the peacekeepers and the organizers. Men are seen as the leaders. And therefore, men often do not see their wives as a partner and do not involve them in decisions or do not treat them with the same sort of respect that one would expect as considering them whenever they make decisions, the way that women often consider their partners when they make decisions. I have run into this in literally every relationship I have ever been in. And I'm not even like that selfless a person, but I still run into it all the time, even with Owen. And Owen is a very sweet, thoughtful guy. And it still happens constantly because he just wasn't taught to take those things into account the way that I was. So in the scene, Mark tries, because Beth's basically like, you never share anything with me. I can't believe I'm just finding out all this shit now. And he says, it has nothing, it's not about you. And she screams, why not? Why isn't it about me? And I loved that line so much. She's right. Why isn't it, Mark? Why do you think that you exist in a vacuum? That all the shit you do doesn't affect her? That she isn't wondering where the fuck you are? The fact that you can let your phone ring all afternoon, not answer it, and come home and know that she's wondering if you're having an affair again, and you feel no need whatsoever to explain yourself or reassure her, when you did have an affair before, and thus do not have any right to expect her trust, it's astounding and typical. And her rage at not being included in this is so understandable, and it's something that I have seen so many times, over and over and over again. There is no woman that I have been friends with who dated men who has not encountered this. And it's so frustrating because it's genuinely an alien concept to men. When you try and explain to them how constantly you are considering what will work for them and including them in your thought process and planning on things, and then you realize that you're not a factor in their mind the same way, you just can't help but be insulted, offended, hurt, even feel like alone. And it's tough, it's really tough. So she basically tells him to decide whether he wants in or out because she's not fucking playing this game anymore, and God bless her. She deserves better. His whole family deserves better. He doesn't get to just do whatever the fuck on his terms anymore. He's not alone. He has a family depending on him, and he doesn't get to decide what it means for them to depend on him. So, yeah. So that's the end of the episode. Yeah, I really don't know what to say, you guys. This season has just been rocky. But I sure hope that fucking Joe gets, completely shit-canned. I really do. So, I guess we'll see. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again to Sophie for commissioning this episode. And thank you to all of you for being in the chat and hanging out with me, and to Rebecca for feeding me some names. Appreciate you. And I will be seeing you again on Tuesday, May 18th with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.